do have the attachments already. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
I found them. Thank you.
Okay, so we are broadcasting.
Very good. Welcome, everybody. If you're watching the broadcast, we're just giving our clerks some time to let everyone trickle in. So do note that we are recording. I haven't convened the meeting yet. We're still allowing people to filter in as attendees and participants before we begin.
Just waiting for. Director May and Director Ariola.
Yes. I can text Director Ariola.
Are we live yet?
Yes, we are. Okay.
So we could just go ahead and convene the meeting, and I'll just take my time because I know that we're waiting for Annie to join, and she'll be doing the first presentation. So welcome, everybody. Today is Friday, April 30th. The time is 12:02 p.m. And this is the East Bay Community Energy Executive Committee meeting. And I'm just going to state for the record, this meeting is being conducted by teleconference pursuant to the Brown Act waivers provided for under the governor's executive order in response to COVID-19. Before we call the roll, I'll just also remind everyone how to participate. So when we have our public comment, I will call for public comment. I'll first check in with the clerk to see if anyone has submitted a speaker card, which you can do at ebce.org. And those folks will be recognized first. And then I'll check to see if anyone has a raised hand. If you're joining via Zoom, use the raise hand feature in the app. If you're calling in, press *9 to be recognized at public comment. And it looks like we can go ahead and call the roll. So I'll turn it over to our clerk.
Great, thank you. Director Ariola. Director Ariola. Director Lopez.
Present.
Director Mai. Director Cobb.
Here.
Thank you. And Chair Martinez.
And I am here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. And now is the time for public comment. This item is reserved for persons wishing to address the Executive Committee on any EBCE related matters that are not otherwise on this meeting agenda. And I will recognize speakers for 3 minutes each. I'll first check with the clerk of the board to see if anyone has submitted a speaker comment card, and we'll recognize those speakers first.
Yes, we have 2 speakers signed up. We have Audrey Ichinose and Vaughn. Audrey Ichinose, I'm unmuting you now.
Excuse me. Thank you. Audrey Ichinose, East Bay Power Alliance. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, and I'm also a member of the California Alliance for Community Energy. I'm getting a lot of feedback. Okay, and my purpose in commenting now is that I wanted to call the board's attention to the threat that AB 1139 poses. We're getting, somebody is not.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Audrey. We'll grant you a little more time, and I'll just ask everyone who's not speaking to please mute at this time.
Great. I think that's good.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much. So I wanted to call EBCE board members to the threat that AB 1139 poses to many EBCE goals, namely its commitment to local clean energy development, growing local jobs and businesses, and from the beginning, and especially in these times, its commitment to social equity. AB 1139, which is being carried by Lorena Gonzalez of San Diego, passed out of the committee, Assembly Utilities and Energy Committee last week and is headed to the Appropriations Committee. So it has a lot of steam behind it. In the main, AB 1139 would significantly lower, if not extinguish, net energy metering tariffs and have untold consequences for the long-term adoption of rooftop solar throughout the state. Pushed by the utilities, this bill is disguised as an effort to fix an alleged cost shift benefiting richer homeowners. But in the larger picture, the bill would make going solar more expensive for every ratepayer and stymie local growth in clean jobs and businesses. For EBCE in particular, the bill would undermine any attempt to make rooftop solar accessible to low and moderate income customers, including renters, as EBCE is now trying to do with its exciting soon to launch Community Solar Green Tariff Program. Community equity issues have to be seen in the larger context. While AB 1139 proposes additional subsidies for low-income care customers, it also introduces new fixed, in quote, grid access fees for everyone. These new fees will tighten utility control over transmission and distribution. And we all know, we're literally and figuratively paying for PG&E's criminal ineptitude in this area. And the costs of transmission, as I think we all know, accounts for the largest and most uncontrolled part of our utility bills. The bill is so flawed and clearly biased in favor of the utilities that over 50 climate and equity organizations have expressed opposition to it. I hope that EBCE board members, individually as well as collectively, will publicly add their voices to this opposition. And we need to know why CalCCA takes no position on AB 1139. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Audrey.
Thank you. I am recognizing Vaughn.
Good morning or afternoon, I guess. The EBCE is a participant or buys power from Rosamond, I think it's Rosamond in Kern County. It's solar panel type of thing. They recently announced a Canadian firm is going to be putting in long-range compressed air long-term storage, and they're going to start doing it in the next, building it in the next couple of years. Will EBCE be able to take advantage of that long duration storage when it's completed? Does anybody know?
So Vaughn, since this is not an agendized topic, we're not really allowed under the Brown Act to give you comprehensive answers, but I'll just have staff take note of that and report back on compressed air storage in an appropriate agenda item in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. At this time, I'll ask the clerk if any hands are raised. And I'll remind attendees that if you're attending via Zoom, you would use the raise hand feature in the Zoom app. And if you're calling in from your phone, press *9 to raise your hand that way. And I'm not seeing any hands raised and no further speaker comment cards submitted. Adrian?
There are no further speakers.
Okay, very well. So I will close public comment at this time. And we'll move to our first action item, which is approval of the minutes from March 26th, 2021. If there are no corrections or updates from my colleagues, I'll entertain a motion in a second.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion from Member Taub, a second from Member Lopez. Please call the roll.
Director Ariella,
Yes.
Director Lopez,
Aye.
Director May. Welcome, Director May.
Aye.
Direct-
Sorry
Direct
about that.
No, we were
voting
voting on the minutes. So if you don't have any questions or
No, I
corrections,
don't. That's what I figured. It was the minutes.
okay.
Great. So is that it? So I should register that as an A?
Yes, please.
Yes. Thank you.
Sorry,
Director
I was
Powell
just dealing with some other
Aye.
side issues.
and
on the
Chair
side.
Martinez.
Aye from me, and thank you for joining us, Director May. Your presence is noted and your vote is noted. So that will take us to our first informational item. That is item number 4. This is a utility customer debt relief update. And for this, I will turn it over to Annie Henderson.
Hi, good afternoon. So I will actually be covering this presentation with my colleague, JP Ross, who's also ready to jump in. So this is, as has come up on many of the last public meetings, both for our full board as well as our executive committee, this issue of utility customer debt relief in response to the ongoing pandemic and COVID issues. So if we could go to the next slide. We as staff have been putting a lot of thought into this and wanted to share with you what work we have underway, as well as what we're where we're looking to end up. We don't have the final answer at this point. We're not going to be presenting, here is the program that we intend to launch, but we want to let you know what we're doing to get there. So we have defined some key objectives, which are to design programs that have a meaningful impact. Essentially, we want to use the money in a way that is going to really make a difference for our customers, not only those that receive the money, but those that don't, because we need to maintain our discount to all customers. And we want to do this in part through leveraging existing debt relief programs. Can we go to the next one, please? So in 2020, as you are aware, we did donate about $2 million to support various services such as food, health, and housing. With our Bright Choice 1% discount, we were able to provide about $10 million in savings to our customers. So that's without doing any sort of distinct customer debt service or customer debt relief. They just kept $10 million in their pockets, which is always a good thing. And then, of course, we suspended our debt collections and returning customers to PG&E based on non-payment. That is going to continue through June. And then at this point is scheduled to expire in line with PG&E's similar expiration of these types of customer protections. So in 2021, we're estimating customer savings from Bright Choice to be about $6 million. And this is lower than 2020 because as of this March, we had to lower our rates considerably in order to make more room for the PCIA. So it just means we're taking in less money and therefore there's less money saved. But there is still a $6 million savings that is being distributed to customers through an immediate 1% discount. We also plan to enhance our outreach and engagement around state and federal utility debt relief to support customer participation and continue to try and get these relief funds to our customers. We expect to have up to $10 million in direct customer debt relief, and that is where we're really looking to do additional analysis to figure out what is the best, most impactful way to utilize that $10 million. And as I already noted, we'll continue with the suspension of the non-payment policies through June. I was going to say next month. It's not quite May yet, though. So on to the next slide. You will see. So I wanted to share this table with you that was developed by our data analytics team. And it's a lot to process, so I'll try and go somewhat slowly. But what you see in the first column on the left is the amount of money due by customer bucket. So these are 0 to 100, 100 to 200, continuing in increments all the way to a very big bucket of $5,000 to $50,000. And that is outstanding, that is debt outstanding that is 60 days or older. And the reason we don't look at current outstanding, well, those people aren't past due. And 30 days outstanding means you just missed one payment. So we're kind of saying who's a little further out, who's having trouble paying their bills. And then within the next columns, what you're seeing, the second and third column is a count of customers as of January 1, 2020. So that was before the pandemic versus January 1, 2021. So you could say within the pandemic. And then the next two columns are similar, but this is a further subset that is just for Care and Sarah customers. And then the last two columns is that same time period comparison for small commercial. And if you just take your eye all the way down to the bottom, you'll see that for those first, the residential in 2020 versus 2021, by count, there's a 20 count differential. It really didn't move very much. Now, we know you could then say, well, how much are they in arrears and does it go beyond 60 days? But let's just for the simplicity of this analysis, the count doesn't really change. But if you look at the residential subset within Care and Sarah, you see a nearly 10x growth in the number of customers that have this slightly older debt. And then if you look at small commercial, you see maybe closer to like 5x growth in those numbers. And the other thing I wanted to point out from this slide is when you look at sort of the fifth from the left, this is our January 2021 number of care customers that have this age of debt. It's about 23,000. We have 117,000 care customers, roughly. That number is sort of always fluctuating, but let's call it 117,000. So that's about 20% of our care customers that have an arrearage older than 60 days. And so this is the kind of data that is going to help us really target, rather than saying, let's give a blanket $100 to every 117,000 customers. So that'd be $12 million program. How do we focus that money on these 23,000 that appear to have that greater need? And so this, again, is the type of analysis that we're looking into. And similarly, we'll look at small business, but I think a lot of our initial thought process is really focused more on the residential sort of at-risk population. If we could go to the next slide, Adrian. And this is where I will turn it over to JP.
Yeah, happy to start off. I did see a hand raised. Do we want to take questions?
Let's save questions for the end.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks very much for the guidance. So if we can go to the next slide, Adrian. So carrying on from Annie's point, I'm going to be talking about our Connected Communities program, which we have discussed with you before, and we're continually getting more details as we continue to evolve this program. One of the things that we have discussed is the focus groups that we have now completed, 9 focus groups in 4 languages over the last few months. And this is specifically to customers who have existing arrearage or who have faced disconnections from PG&E in the past. And to Annie's point, it's really critical to think about and understand what our customers are facing and which customers are really needing help and how that help can be delivered to those customers most in need. So we've got a really fantastic report that's been developed by the consultants who helped us carry out these focus groups. And some of the feedback from them, not surprisingly, is that their utility bill is just one bill. And the EBCE portion of that utility bill is just part of that bill. But that many of our customers who are facing disconnection and arrearage are constantly juggling all of their monthly bills, not just their utility bill. And really, actually, making sure that they can maintain service and pay their rent and buy food. And that means that sometimes they let bills go to 60, 90, 120 days and then pay part of it to maintain service. But this is an ongoing challenge that these customers are facing, and that they're also quite aware of their bills. They're constantly juggling them. And one of the other key takeaways is, they have limited trust to the utility. Unfortunately, many of them don't really know about EBCE, but they know PG&E quite well because they're constantly on the phone with PG&E trying to manage their bills. And that kind of flexibility and understanding how to pay their bills and juggle their bills is quite important. So when we think about things that help people pay their bills on time, like payment plans or automatic withdrawals, those types of programs don't necessarily work with the customers who are challenged, because they don't always know that they've got money in their account. And if PG&E tries to take money out of their account and there's no money in that account, then they get fees. And sometimes those bank accounts get locked out of an automatic payment program. And so it creates these cascading effects. So having these conversations has been super helpful. And we have now a long list of recommendations that we are working into our programs. And certainly having more programs and more types of programs to manage bills and manage payments, as well as having people who can communicate what programs are available, like the CBOs, the community-based organizations that we've been talking with, are a couple of the key outcomes that have come to us from these focus groups. If we can go to the next slide, please. So our goal with Connected Communities, as Annie had mentioned, is really to focus on meeting the needs of our most vulnerable customers, and recognizing how we as EBCE can play a key role in easing some of this stress, with the end goal of reducing disconnections. So arrearages lead to disconnections, and EBCE is not doing actual disconnections, and we are not sending customers back to PG&E right now, but we need to be thinking about solutions that kind of manage more than just the EBCE portion of the bill. There's a broader bill, there's other bills that need to be paid. And so how can we not only put together programs that deal with kind of the EBCE amount due, but more of a full spectrum across utility and other bills. And using the data that we have to understand what our options are, and a slew of programs that can really help meet the total problem, not just the EBCE portion of the bill. Next slide. So as we're going through this, there's really kind of this funnel as we get from understanding where these customers are and what challenges they're facing, similar to the table that Annie talked about earlier, and then starting to identify which customers can fit into which programs. And there's a few of those that are state-based and even federal. And as we go through this and start to alleviate some of this stress with particular customers who are eligible for programs like CARE or Arrearage Management Plan or DAC Green Tariff and other programs that can help with other parts of customers' monthly expenses. As we start to address some of those concerns over the course of coming months, then we can look at how we can use the debt forgiveness that we have budget for in the $10 million budget that Annie had referred to earlier, as kind of a last resort for those customers that we can't help through other means. And again, this will be targeted work to try to identify which programs are going to work for which customers. Next slide, please. So the Arrearage Management Plan is a program that is available from the PUC and to all customers in the state. EBCE is going to be doing work to enroll customers, our customers, in this program. It's available to CARE and FARA customers with over $500 in total PG&E debt. So that includes EBCE's generation portion, as well as PG&E's transmission distribution portion, and their gas bill if they have gas, which most of our customers do. And so customers can enroll in this program, and as long as they make a payment of their current amount due, then each time they make that payment over 12 months, they'll have 1/12 of their outstanding debt forgiven. And there are some restrictions and continuing eligibility rules that we don't control, that are the mandate from the PUC, one of which is that a customer can't miss 2 consecutive payments or 3 payments over the course of the year. Right now we have about 13,500 customers eligible for AMP. We get a weekly report from PG&E about enrollments and eligibility. So far about 1,500, so a little over 10% of the eligible counts have already enrolled. And that's without EBCE targeted enrollment information out to customers. So the information about the program is definitely out there and people are signing up for it, which is good. We have not done enrollment outreach for this program for one very specific reason, which is it's only, I think, last week or the week before that PG&E kind of put together a more standardized enrollment approach. And we were concerned that if we sent out a lot of enrollment notifications to our customers, that it would kind of flood PG&E and they wouldn't be able to take that in. That was direct feedback we got from PG&E. And so we have a marketing plan for these customers that is a mix of digital and direct mail, and also potentially some call center activities, some outbound calls. But we really want to maximize participation in this program and also think about how we can continue to assist the customers who have enrolled in this program and make sure that they're not falling out. So what is additional assistance that we can provide to make sure that they can stay in? Because the longer they stay in, the more of their debt they get forgiven. But what we've learned from our focus groups is they're constantly challenged by different bills. And so they may, customers may very well come up against some kind of a roadblock that inhibits their ability to pay. And then what do we do? That's one of the things that we are thinking about. As well as looking at ways we can expand eligibility. So we have a lot of customers who we know have some debt, but they're not eligible for AMP because they don't meet this $500 threshold, or they might not be in care. And so there are other things that we can do, one of which is advocacy at the PUC to expand eligibility, potentially bringing this below $500. And again, thinking about how we can collaborate with the community to keep people in this program. But we'll be initiating outreach very soon for that. Next slide, please. We also have our Care Fair enrollment. This is a 20% discount on the full PG&E bill, not just EBCE's portion, and it's income qualified. So customers have to, they used to have to prove their income with COVID. They just have to apply for the program, and they need to be care enrolled in order to be eligible for AMP. So we have, as Annie had mentioned, about 117,000 customers, and have, that program has yielded significant discounts for those customers. So we've been doing outreach. We did some outreach grants in 2020, and we are continuing to do outreach, certainly as we think about care as a doorway to being eligible for other programs like the Arrearage Management Plan or the DAC Green Tariff Program that I will talk about in another slide. But Care and Fair it's a big discount, 20%, and we want to maximize our customers enroll there. There's different statistics about care enrollment. Some of the utilities information leads us to believe that there is pretty high enrollment. There have been some studies that have indicated there are certain zip codes with low enrollment for care. And so that's why we're continuing to do outreach for care enrollment and using some of the disconnection modeling that our team has done to try to target that outreach for customers we think would be eligible for care. Next slide, please. So there are other programs that we are also evaluating. So as mentioned earlier, in the focus groups, there is, customers are really working on paying their bills, all of their bills. And so these are a couple of other programs that we've been evaluating, Reach and LIHEAP, which are, can help customers pay their utility bills. So we have recently launched our Connected Communities website. We've got the link down here below, and it's also on the top screen of our website under residential and commercial. And so we want to be promoting these programs and making sure that customers are aware of everything, not just programs that are being run by EVCE, but other programs that they can enroll in. Next slide, please. So the DAC Green Tariff and Community Solar Green Tariff are additional programs that are available. These will give another 20% of discount on top of the CARE discount. So CARE gives a 20% discount. This gives another 20% discount, and it will be eligible to CARE customers who live within disadvantaged communities, which is the top 25% of Cal Enviro Screen census tracts. So we have about 2,100 customers eligible for DAC GT. We are planning to launch it probably about September is when we would do enrollments. We're buying some solar from Marine Clean Energy so that we can move the open date of this program earlier and start providing this discount to customers as early as possible. And one of the things that we're also looking at is there is an overlap between arrearage management plan eligible customers and DAC Green Tariff eligible customers. And so what we are planning to do is enroll customers that are eligible for DAC Green Tariff who are also eligible for AMP. And this should maximize for a subset of AMP eligible customers the ability to make their ongoing bill payments, because now their ongoing bill payments will be lower because they'll be getting an additional 20% discount. So this is one of the strategies for how to get people enrolled in AMP and also help them pay their ongoing bills, because we can kind of double the benefit, not double the benefit, we can increase the benefit for some portion of our AMP eligible customers by enrolling them in DAC Green Tariff. And so that is something that we are also working on for that subset of CARE customers who live in DACs. And this will provide a little over $200,000 in annual savings for the customers who are able to enroll in DAC Green Tariff and Community Solar Green Tariff. Next slide. And then lastly, on the regulatory front, there is a debt relief proceeding that we are actively engaged in, and that is ongoing at the PUC. And that is the forum where we can be advocating for things discussed earlier around increasing eligibility for the arrearage management plan, and working to identify other opportunities that can help customers reduce arrearage in this ongoing and unfortunately increasing problems that our customers are facing. One of the other things that we're really focused on is community-based organization collaboration. So as mentioned, in the focus groups, customers don't really trust their utilities, but they do trust community-based organizations. So doing outreach through those CBOs for both arrearage management plan as well as community solar green tariff is going to be critical for building those kind of long-term relationships that will help us help our customers pay their bills and avoid utility disconnections and other challenges. So I'm going to pass it back to Annie to take on the next set of slides.
Thanks, JP. So the next section I'll go through fairly quickly. This is the emergency rental assistance programs. I imagine many of you as local elected officials are far more familiar with this than I am, but we could go to the next slide, please, Adrian. Just to cover quickly, $25 billion federally, about 2.65 coming to California. And then Alameda County and San Joaquin County both got their own allocations, and then Oakland and Fremont got individual allocations. So, based on some assumptions, we're looking at like $106 million flowing through to the EBCE territory. If we can go to the next slide, please. And this, even though it doesn't get absorbed into the title, it is actually rent and utility debt relief for the period, I believe, beginning March 2020 through the present. Here's an example of the Keep Oakland Housed application, where it specifically calls out, how much do you have in unpaid utilities, and how many months are you behind. If we can go to the next slide, please. I was able to connect with someone from the Fremont program, and they did confirm that payments are going directly to PG&E. I've checked in with PG&E. They confirmed that any payments that come in are continuing to be shared on a pro rata basis with EBCE. This is something that we have fought for when COVID hit, and we continue to fight to maintain, because previously the waterfall was that any payments that came in first basically all went to PG&E, and if it wasn't a full payment, anything remaining would go to EBCE. And you could see how our outstanding balance could just continue to accrue and accrue, especially over this last year. So for these payments that are coming through these local programs, the money should be coming to EBCE. Unfortunately, we're not able to, as of yet, track it from what PG&E receives. So we will be working to try and work with the local agencies that are administering these funds and see if that can give us another data point on our customers so that we can better understand where we can leverage our money the best. And I think with that, the remaining slides are just, it goes a little bit deeper into the analysis. So we could go there if there are particular questions that are relevant, but otherwise this is the end of the primary presentation on the topic.
Great, thank you, Annie. With my colleagues' indulgence, I'm going to check to see if there have been any speaker cards submitted on this item and recognize public commenters at this time.
Yes, there is one speaker, Jada Dermaz-Dogan. I am going to unmute Jada now. Hold on one second.
And while Adrian is setting that up, I'll just remind those of you who are joining us via Zoom, use the raise hand feature to be recognized. And those who are calling in, use *9 to raise your hand. But Jada, you can give her 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thanks. Hi, Jada Durmaz-Dogan with the Local Clean Energy Alliance and East Bay Clean Power Alliance. I'd like to thank the staff for adding more information about the utility debt relief programs on their website, and also thanks for this informative presentation. I actually have a couple of questions. I don't know if I should ask them and then you will answer all of them at the end, but I have many of them anyway. So the first, it's about AMP. What is the timeline to enroll customers to the AMP program?
Diane, would you like us to answer these questions as they're asked, or how
you know what, Jada, go ahead and ask all of your questions and I'll make them.
Okay, great, thank you. And the other one is about you said you were looking into ways to keep customers on the AMP program for a full year, and you already mentioned that you will enroll them for the DAC green tariff. I think it's a great opportunity, but how fast will they be able to start benefiting from the DAC green tariff, once they got enrolled? And what about the monthly bill relief credit? Would that help them continue to participate for a full year? Are you planning to look into those kind of solutions as well? And the other questions are about slide 4, when you shared all that information. Do you know how many of those over 28,000 customers in the residential category are eligible for CARE and FERA? And also, do we know how many people enrolled in CARE and FERA since January 2020? And that's all. I think many questions.
why don't I can start, and Annie, JP, why don't you both can jump in too. I'll sort of start at a high level, and then you can answer some of the specifics. So, you know, I think generally, as you think about the AMP program, you know, the AMP program is open today. So, you know, the challenges I think we've identified are the enrollment mechanism is quite burdensome. Today, you actually have to call in and, you know, speak with a customer service representative from PG&E to enroll, and there are long wait times, and anyway, they're just not insignificant barriers. So, you know, we're actively working with PG&E and the Public Utilities Commission to implement solutions that are going to significantly reduce those barriers to enrolling in the AMP program. You know, as we think about AMP program persistence, it's not clear to us that simply providing, you know, a $10 or $15 a month bill credit will solve an individual customer's persistence, you know, in the program. You know, I think we want to be quite a bit more targeted with, you know, our interventions to help customers sign up for and then persist in that program. You know, I think targeted bill credits is certainly a tool we want to have in our toolbox. But, you know, we want to give bill credits to customers who are in the AMP program where those bill credits are going to, you know, demonstrably increase the likelihood of their persistence, as opposed to give everybody who's in the program a bill credit and perhaps not be able to give, you know, there may be instances where somebody, you know, there's a small subset of the enrolled customers need larger bill credits to persist. But then there are customers who don't need any bill credits at all. And so, you know, we want to be tailored. And given the fact that this is not a, you know, we're talking thousands of customers, not hundreds of thousands, I think a tailored approach is really merited here. Annie, do you want to sort of speak to, or JP actually, do you want to speak to, you know, kind of timelines for DAC GT?
Yeah.
And kind of the role that we're going to, with the ways in which we're leveraging DAC GT to lower customer bills?
Yeah, for sure. Just, yeah, and on your point on AMP, we have been working with folks at UC Berkeley to identify outreach techniques that have proven effective in the past. And so one of the pieces we've been trying to build is an ability to know what the customer's total arrearage amount is that is inclusive of PG&E's bill, because customers respond better when you can say, you know, you could benefit from $675 in debt forgiveness if you participate in this program, versus you can erase some debt if you participate in this program. So we've actually spent a good amount of time trying to get that from PG&E. They won't give it to us. So now we have a backup, which is you owe PG&E, you owe EBCE $225, and we believe that means you owe PG&E $675. So these are the things we've been balancing to say, what is the marketing technique that is going to work the best for getting customers enrolled in this program? And then we've also been waiting for PG&E to kind of open up the door so that we could send people into this program with that targeted outreach. That targeted outreach will be multi-channel because not all of our customers have email, or there is a digital divide. So that's why I say there's direct mail, there's also phone calls. So there's a variety of outreach channels that we want to be utilizing for AMP enrollment. On DAC GT, DAC Green Tariff, we need to get a couple of things completed. One, we need to buy some interim resources. Right now, we're planning to do that from Marine Clean Energy. So we need to have that. So we're putting an agreement in place for that. And then we also have to get the billing system set up so that we can actually give the discount to the customers. And that's some work we're doing with PG&E. So that's why we've targeted kind of September as a timeline for DAC GT. We're hoping that we can hit that fourth quarter timeline. And to answer the question from Jada, you know, as soon as DAC GT is available and we enroll customers in it, they will start to get that 20% discount. So we got to make sure we hit a couple of those key parameters, key deliverables in order to launch that program. And again, as we're reaching out to AMP eligible customers and we start to see who's DAC GT eligible, we will be specifying the message to folks based on their enrollment abilities. And you can be sure that, once we've identified who's eligible for both of those programs, we'll have some targeted messaging that is specific, to that overlap and the additional benefit that subset of AMP and DAC GT eligible customers are for. They'll get messaging specific to that.
I want to make one additional point just about timelines too. So, currently, and it certainly is subject to extension, but currently PG&E is not allowed to disconnect customers. There's possibility that moratorium could be lifted this summer. But even after the moratorium is lifted, there's still going to be multiple months of notification that was going to have to be submitted to customers before disconnection can occur. And that's operative because basically our expectation is we will have our AMP outreach and our DAC GT capabilities fully kind of rolled out and operative prior to any customers being able to be disconnected. So if you assume the disconnection moratorium is say lifted in July, and there's a 2 or 3 month notification requirement before disconnection can occur, customers cannot be disconnected until say October. And so we will have launched these programs and they will be in place supporting our customers before that is possible. So that's something we are cognizant of, and it's something we're building into our timelines.
And yeah, go ahead, Annie. I think you were going to answer the questions regarding the Carefera customers, how many people were enrolled since 2020. And then Adrian, if you wouldn't mind bringing up slide 4, just so folks will see those numbers.
Yep. So this is from, we have really great data analytics that our team has built out. And so this is a little difficult to see, but if this were live, this is just a screenshot, you could scroll over each of those bars and see the precise count. So on January 4th of 2020, we had about 95,000 customers signed up for care. If you look at April 18th, the number that I took, the 117, was from April 7th. Now on April 18th, it's at 123,000. So you can see, and part of the reason for this buildup is, of course, people losing their household income, but also because there was no verification to the process. That verification process is coming back. Now, Jada also asked about, the 28,000 sort of standard residential customers who have arrears over 60 days. How many of those are eligible for care and FARA? The simple answer is we're not sure, because we don't have income information specific to each individual. When an individual sets up an account, they do have to provide some credit information to PG&E, but we do not receive that. So what we've been doing in some of the care outreach that we've done to date is to look at census and zip code information so that we can say, okay, based on the census, this zip code household income would qualify for care or would be close to qualifying for care, as well as some other data sets that we can overlay to try and identify where the potential eligible customers might be. So that's something that we continue to do as part of our care enrollment outreach. And then I think the last question that was asked was about a monthly credit to assist in what I'm calling AMP retention. So like, how do you keep someone in the program? I think that is something that we're considering, and we're thinking about how do we do that, especially because it's not just our portion of the payment, it's the PG&E portion as well. So if we are able to identify a customer who has missed a payment, how can we apply, and what is the value of the funds that we need to apply to keep them on the program? And JP, if you want to speak more to that.
Yeah,
I think I answered it actually, guys. I covered that in the beginning, so I think we're good on that particular point.
We're good on that. The one thing I wanted to add was we are actually now testing 3 different providers of data that we have discussed, kind of trying to get this more granular household data from, because there are providers of that type of data. As Andy mentioned, we don't have income data, but we're looking at testing some different data sources, because that would really greatly help not only you know, in our disconnections model, but certainly in our outreach. If we had better information on that, then we could answer some of those questions, at least with some degree of certainty, and then target, you know, programmatic outreach based on that data. So we're actually engaged in a proof of concept, getting some data for proof of concept with 3 different providers to validate what they tell us is the information they have at the household level.
Just my
Thank you,
final
JP.
comment I want to share. I think this may be getting to questions that, you know, the board is going to ask too. Is, you know, as you probably see with the focus groups, we're taking a real putting a real emphasis here on actually meeting people where they are and talking to the customers who are actually experiencing you know, significant utility debts, and we really want that engagement with customers, you know, on the ground to lead our strategies here. So
Thank you. Just checking in with the clerk to see if there are any other submitted electronic comments. I don't see any hands raised at this time.
There are no further submitted comments.
Very good. I will close public comment on this item and bring it back to my colleagues for questions and comments. And we'll begin with Chair Kalb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the staff, JP, Annie, and Nick for putting this presentation together, and also appreciate the folks at the Local Clean Energy Alliance for the letter they submitted and their comments today and previously. Just not to get into too much, but there's the CARE and FARA opportunities for some of our customers, obviously, and then the other programs, AMP, REACH, the other acronyms you have listed there, the low-income heat program, and so on. First of all, I think we should acknowledge that while those customers who have an existing debt are maybe the ones who are most in need, there are many, many low-income struggling customers who are paying their bills more or less, but are still struggling, and it hurts for them to do that. And they're in need of the outreach almost as much as those who are actually in debt. I mean, sometimes people are deciding, do I go, buy more food for the table versus pay my utility bill? I have to do both. I don't want the electricity turned off. Oh, what do I do? What do I do? And so we have a lot of really low-income customers who maybe don't quite fall in the, oh, I owe a lot of debt right now category, but are still struggling. And so I'm suggesting that our outreach should be income-based or eligibility-based, but we have a lot of customers, and we should make that as broad as possible to those who are in need. And I think this is part of the presentation already. I think there's an understanding, but I'll just say it out loud. Postcards and things like that don't do it. Personal contact, like was suggested, is the best, if not the sort of the most productive way. Phone calls and other ways to get personal contact. Obviously, with COVID, that's hard right now, but that much more than anything else is going to help us help them more effectively and more comprehensively. So I think the staff already knows that, so I'm not saying anything you don't already know. I just wanted to say it, for the record, and make sure that the outreach we do is as effective as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, any other questions or comments? I'm happy to throw my mine in. Just as a general comment, I think that one thing that sets this agency apart from other CCAs is the amount of data that we are collecting and working with. And I appreciate staff's ability to work with this data to really get to a granular level of who is having issues and how to help those people. And I'm happy to hear Nick say that we potentially could have till October before anyone is being threatened with the actual disconnection of their service. My comment, I was recently, thank you, Annie, for putting me in touch with Full Court Press, with whom we're working to kind of work on branding and communications with our customers. And I really appreciate staff putting the available programs for energy bill assistance onto the website. I'm hoping as we work with Full Court Press to promote those to the top of the page, because I think what we'll see between now and October is people are realizing that, you know, the looming effects of their utility arrearages could result in having their electricity cut off. I think folks will be visiting our website, and I would like them to see those solutions, you know, above the fold, right when they get there. Not only understand what EBCE does, but see that there are solutions for them right there as soon as they get to the website. And I want to reiterate what Chair Cal mentioned in terms of reconsidering outreach. It looks so different now than it has in previous years. And I'll say, you know, I know with a lot of political campaigns, so much has moved to texting. And I know that mobile phones are really a way that you can reach so many people in the community. And I hope to understand more about that being effective if we have access to folks' mobile phone numbers, if we're able to reach them that way, even if it's an invitation to click on this link to schedule an appointment to talk to someone. My last comment is I'd love to know more just about the customer service experience for enrolling in AMP for folks who are going through PG&E. Do you know if they're experiencing an hour-long wait time to talk to anyone, and what can we do? And you know, kind of dovetailing with that, are our customer service representatives able to answer all of those questions and guide people through that application process if someone were to call our number on their bill? So yeah, those two questions, and then we'll go to Mayor May.
So, you know, on the wait time, I mean, I think right now we have sort of anecdotal, we have some anecdotes. We have had some staff that have kind of gone through the process just to sort of explore. And, you know, it's early. And so I think that's what, you know, we have to acknowledge, is that PG&E is early in its process. But, you know, the experiences were not great. You know, 30-minute wait time and the no ability to enroll on behalf of someone else. So, you know, you cannot enroll your, you can't enroll your mom or grandmother or something. Now, again, these are all things that are being streamlined in real time. So I think in a sense, it's good. It's okay for our perspective that, you know, we haven't started our outreach because, you know, the processes are being improved. You know, we are very focused in our engagement with the PUC and PG&E in really trying to develop ways to improve the enrollment process. Like, you know, as an example, I think something we want to explore, and, you know, unfortunately we don't have control over this, but we want to explore is, could we basically sign customers up and do batched enrollments, whereby, you know, we create a web form or a paper form, we enroll a customer, and then, you know, we submit on their behalf. You know, we don't have an answer to that. I think we're having active dialogue to see, you know, how we can do that. You know, are there ways that we could bring, you know, to your point on texting, you know, is there a way that we could support text-based enrollment? I think it's the benefit of a community energy provider like us is that, you know, we can try those things, and then we can basically aggregate for customers. So again, these are open questions. We are, you know, rest assured though that we're pressing on all of this stuff.
Thank you. And
yes, our CSRs, our CSRs cannot enroll customers currently. So if you call our call center, they can't actually say, yeah, great, you know, here's how you know, they can provide, I guess, some information, but most of the information is to call PG&E.
Please let us know if we're able to do those batch enrollments, because I think it would be so great if we could direct people to our website, get more recognition around our name, and in assisting people to do this. Mayor May?
Yes, I was thinking about different ways. I looked at the website too, and I think that, it's great that we have so much information on our front page, but certainly with this type of program, if we could put a banner or some sort of highlight so people, as soon as you come in, see it first and forefront rather than having to scroll through and look at I know it's hard because everything's important, but I think certainly in this COVID time period, more so. And I don't know if we want to make it a live banner or active banner. So rather than just, or static, rather than just being consistent, you could have it rolling in different languages. So people could also, I think part of the issue sometimes is knowing where to go. And then I know some people have defaults set on their computer so they can translate into certain languages, but if they don't, that would be harder to find even. And so having that type of scrolling mechanism would be more welcoming. I would also ask, I don't know if when we do our information outreach, I know it says that you've done it in 4 or 5 different languages, I think 4 languages at least, but would you ever consider, like, I know some of the media also have like PSA, public service announcement slots, whether or not we buy them in local ethnic media or even local, just the zip codes that you're trying to target, because I think that, specifically for that outreach, I would imagine some of those broadcasting companies would have some sort of promotional programs. It's a good way for you to be able to create more awareness and branding of EBCE in those media and in those groups, and then to get that out to people. And then also as we send bills, if there's any way for collateral. I know that for us, we were very fortunate this time. This is the first time that Fremont was able to secure direct funding for the Keep Fremont Housed. And our program we're running, it's actually 2 tranches. One is first the allocation that was direct to Fremont, and the second one was the one that's the state funding. And that's because we're paying, and I have to check on the utilities, but we're paying the rent, back due rents up to 100% instead of 80%. That's why we wanted to run through that 7 million first. I know the first day that we launched it, we had significant interest that it was almost crashing our lines. So it was a good problem. But it shows the gravity of the issue that we're facing, and so whatever we can do to make that an easier process. I know that our team is working very closely on this. So if you wanted to talk to our Human Services Department, that would be something that I would recommend. And I can't commit to our reporting, but I do know that that's something that I specifically have asked for, is to be able to drill down and look at who's getting the assistance and support. So, I'd also recommend, if you have the information in different languages, we have a Fremont Family Resource Center, which I was just at earlier, just now. And we have over 30 community-based organizations there, and many which are specific to targeting some of our communities that have a greater need for some of these assistance programs. And if you send them information like we did sometimes with the census and other efforts like the outreach on COVID, they're able to utilize their own translation services too, to get that out to their community members. And they're excellent. I think part of it is building that trust and reference in terms of, having people who refer EBCE. So I'm looking forward to these programs and looking to see how we can help benefit. I absolutely think it's making that bridge and connection between the services and the programs that are available to those who are in most need right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor May. The chair recognizes Member Lopez.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I won't be asking any questions today. A couple of comments. First of all, I appreciate the level of detail and the numbers, but I found myself during the presentation trying to get some clarity along the way, and in the sense that the presentation builds on itself. So my request would be in the future, when there's quite very quantitative, very quantitative driven presentation, if there can be some sort of pause just to make sure that as you accumulate the concepts on top of one another, that we're all kind of caught up, if you will. That's just for me and the way I digest information. The other thing too is I would say that the data, what you're saying is that there's about approximately $5 million to there's 10 million available, but 5 million is what's projected, and you're looking at, I think you said 20% of the customer base being in, targeted here. I think that one of that was said, something said earlier really has resonated, and it would be my own experience here in San Leandro. There are a lot of folks that are now in a position where they haven't been before. And that is, we've had a lot of folks that were employed that are no longer employed. Record levels of unemployment. Folks that our food pantries have increased 8-fold during COVID. And so there are a lot of people who are now in a position that they were not in a year ago, and that were probably not in a lot of these programs before, because they were employed and they were firmly middle class. And what we're finding in our community is that people who are firmly middle class are now food insecure. So I think there needs to be some sort of mechanism to be able to address these folks that are, in trouble. I think it's more than just now, because of what's happened, more than the people that were having challenges, economic challenges. I think that has widely expanded. I would think that if there was a way to figure that out, and again, you have a lot of data here, I'm sure it's in here somewhere. And I know that there is, arrearage to a certain degree and above certain thresholds, which I don't recall all the numbers. Like I said, I was a bit overwhelmed. But I wouldn't be surprised if there's people that are sort of going to be asking for a way to have debt relief once the moratoriums are all lifted beyond what we're anticipating. I think it's a lot worse than we think it is out there. And I think we just wanted to just sort of put that out there, that we need to be ready for that, and be able to adjust for that, as a board. I think that the concept of people not being able to make 2 payments and then they become unqualified, I think is honestly adding insult to injury. I think people are going to be caught in a place where you're going to be thinking about, a lot of the food insecurity programs they're probably going to lower after federal monies have been spent through and all that. I think a lot of folks are going to be needing a little bit more flexibility there than something quite so strict. And I think we need to be ready for that. And I think it was brought up during the presentation of what if these happens. I think we need to plan now for those what ifs, and make those actually not what ifs, but assumptions that we anticipate. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick, did you want to respond?
Yeah, I did want to just provide kind of maybe some context. I think, those are all really important points you've made, Director Lopez. So, a couple things I'd like to just sort of share. So, one, absolutely right that there are customers who, maybe are not in the CARE program but have utility debt, or there are CARE customers who aren't eligible for the AMP program. I think very much part of our outreach strategy is, we know all of our customers who have outstanding utility bills. Now, we don't necessarily know that all the outstanding bill on the PG&E side, because that's not our data. We certainly know our customers, and so we absolutely intend to target outreach for, say, CARE, which is this utility bill assistance that if you enroll in the CARE program, you immediately get a 20% or more discount on your next bill. So, the customers we start to focus on outreach for that program are our customers who are not currently in that program but have an outstanding bill. What the right threshold is something we're going to sort of explore. Is it 50, 100, 150? And those are going to be the customers we target to help inform them that this program is out there and they may be eligible for a not insignificant discount on their utility bills. And then once they're enrolled in the CARE program, then they're eligible for debt forgiveness programs. So I think that's one thing. The other point around the structure of the AMP program and it being 2 consecutive bills, you know, I think we share some of those concerns, but, you know, those are decisions that are not ours to make. And, you know, fundamentally, the biggest risk that consumers face when not paying their utility bills are being disconnected and losing power. And because that's not something we have control over, we could forgive all of our customer utility debt. You know, we have, you know, millions of dollars. Those customers would still face the risk of disconnection. And so, you know, we think the AMP program, for its flaws, is really important because it helps forgive the charges that create disconnection risk. And disconnection is really where you start to have a whole cascading, you know, series of pretty significantly, you know, detrimental effects. So, you know, and then I'll finally say, you know, we refer to the point that we, you know, we're expecting $10 million of customer debt relief this year. That's really where, on the charges we control, we'll help customers deal with those. So, you know, I think the way we look at it is we really want to try to find as many ways as possible to support our customers participating in programs that help them pay their utilities holistically. So both PG&E and EBCE charges. But at some point in time, you know, we're going to make a decision. We'll bring to the board this fiscal year kind of a policy or decision to relieve the outstanding EBCE debts, which, you know, again, is helpful to the customer, but because it doesn't relieve the disconnection risk, is a relatively small part of solving their problems.
Yeah. It's a complicated, you know, situation because some of this, like as you've indicated, some of this is out of our control, and some of the rules that are established are not ours. And in fact, we don't do the disconnections, which you have articulated over a number of meetings, and I appreciate that that you have, because I think that helps, you know, solidify in our minds really that we'll have to be very creative and think really out of the box as to what can we do, you know, and I think therein lies the opportunity, you know, what can we imagine here? I would presume the CCAs throughout the state are entertaining in these similar dialogues, and I would be very curious, Nick, if you could canvas in your conversations with your colleagues various approaches, because we're dealing vis-a-vis with, you know, PG&E here, and I think similar utilities in Southern California named by, I mean, you know, with terms of their roles. I'd like to kind of get an idea if there is some sort of paradigm that can be established so we're not insulated and siloed, but really try to figure out how to put our arms around this on a more state or holistic level, and seeing what ideas anybody else is coming up with that we may want to consider, and vice versa. Do you think that you might be having an opportunity to convene around this topic with your colleagues?
You know, we have very regular conversations. At sort of the very senior management, and you know, I know Annie does, you know, at sort of the marketing and account services level, but I think that would be a really useful exercise for us to bring forward at some point here. You know, kind of an overview of the different approaches and the lessons learned. I know I was just talking to the executive director of the large CCA in Southern California, and they're doing a very similar thing to us with their outreach, you know, customer outreach, and, you know, multiple languages, focus on partnering with community-based organizations. You know, they, just as kind of an interesting idea, they shared, they're looking to partner with a very well-known member of the Mexican national soccer team to do a public service announcement in around some of these debt relief programs in their service territory. So, you know, there are whole different kinds of approaches, certainly, and you know, we want to make sure we're aware of the best practices and we're leveraging them.
All right,
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you. Those are my comments and questions.
Thank you, Member Lopez. Seeing no further comments or questions from my colleagues, thanks staff again for this item and move us to item number 5. This is the regulatory and legislative update. Melissa, are you ready to go?
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'll wait for the slides. There we go. Next slide, please. First, I will go through a few of the regulatory items, and then we'll discuss some legislative items as well. In terms of the regulatory, I'm going to talk through reliability. Won't touch too much on the COVID-19 proceedings since that was the discussion in the last agenda item, but we'll also talk about the PCIA and then energy efficiency. Next slide, please. So there's actually several different proceedings at the PUC that deal with reliability. And so we've fit them all onto one slide here because thematically they're very related, even though they're separate proceedings. The first one is the summer 2021 reliability proceeding. This was a proceeding that was opened on a very short turnaround to make sure that we didn't have blackouts in 2021 like we did in 2020. And so the PUC actually recently issued a decision in this proceeding, and it essentially does two things. It directs the IOUs to procure a minimum of 1,000 megawatts, and all customers pay those costs. The idea was to try to make sure to lock down some very immediate term procurement, again, to avoid the problems from last summer. And then the commission also appeals to CCAs to develop demand response and load reduction programs for the summer. EBCE has certainly been active in this space for a long time, so this isn't something new for us. It's something that is really incorporated into a lot of our programmatic activities already. Although the particular flavor of program that the commission had been pushing was something that we tried early on and found not to be very effective at all. So, so we've been helping to educate the commission on our experience with that program. And so this proceeding is essentially done at this point. So I'm going to move on to the Integrated Resources Plan proceeding. In this one, the major activity right now is we're expecting a proposed decision next month. Essentially, you may recall that in late 2019, the commission ordered us to procure a certain quantity in tranches beginning in 2021 to ensure that there's, in the longer run, the reliability that the grid needs. We're expecting a second procurement order to address some midterm reliability, and this is due to resource retirements. So, and that's because of both Diablo Canyon as well as some of the ones through cooling plants that are expected to retire, as well as other fossil facilities. So we haven't actually seen the proposed decision yet, but the judge had issued an order that gave some indications of where the proposed decision might come out. We did provide some comments back on that. So what I have up here in the bullets is not, again, what's on the table, but it was some ideas of what might be. So the first is that the commission's looking at approximately 7,500 megawatts of new procurement beginning in 2023 and through 2025. They're looking at some carve-outs for two particular technologies, geothermal and long duration storage. And they've devised an allocation methodology that would look at how much are we contracted for now and allocate more to entities that are contracted for less. We do see some inconsistency with this proposal and the PCIA proposed decision. So we're continuing to have conversations with the commission about that. But that's kind of what we're expecting to see. So again, we'll get the proposed decision next month. And then with resource adequacy, this is kind of nearer term reliability. We're also expecting a proposed decision in May. and or maybe more than one proposed decision actually. Part of it is dealing with some near-term refinements to the program. We expect to see increased penalties for RA shortfalls. There's going to be some changes to the rules around setting the RA requirement and constraints on resource types, and then changes to the counting methodologies for various resources, things like demand response and behind the meter solar plus storage. Some of these issues are things that we've been working with the Commission on for quite some time, and some of them may actually be good. We're actually looking forward to a behind the meter solar and storage counting methodology. And then there's also some proposals for broad structural reform. And CalCCA and Southern California Edison have joined forces to work through a proposal. There's a couple other proposals on the table as well about how can we ensure that energy attributes and hourly capacity requirements are incorporated into the RA program, given the evolving mix of resources on the grid and the need for resource integration. So I'll have more to report once we actually see what the proposed decisions look like, but just wanted to let you know that those activities are happening and that we've been working very closely through these proceedings. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm not going to say too much on this one other than we are expecting a proposed decision at the end of May. And we're looking to see, so CalCCA had its own proposals, and there were a number of other proposals thrown out in the proceeding. So we will be looking at what those options are going to be and what we're being asked to do. And we will work accordingly to make sure that whatever's proposed is really doing the best to help our customers. Next slide, please. So PCIA, I believe that I had already updated you that we received a proposed decision on the Working Group 3 proposal in April. I think we talked about that at the board meeting. And so comments on the proposed decision were filed on Monday. Reply comments are due May 3rd. Just as a reminder, the proposed decision really maintains the status quo. It rejects the Working Group 3 proposal that we had been working on with other parties, which would have given sort of a proportionate allocation to all of the load serving entities paying into PCIA. So under this proposal, yeah, so for RA, we would get nothing. For RPS, renewables, we would be offered a load share proportional allocation. And there's a few problems that we see with the way it's done in the proposal. It would allow the investor and utilities to set a bid floor price for the market offer. It would give utility any amounts that either we wouldn't accept as an allocation or they don't sell. So the utilities bundle customer continues to kind of receive a disproportionate amount of attributes, and it would not allow us to resell any accepted allocation amounts. So we find all of those problematic, and it really skews the balance towards the bundle customer in terms of the benefits. And then on greenhouse gas free, essentially the proposed decision punts on this issue. It maintains the current allocation process through 2023, but we don't know what they're going to do afterwards. And so they could continue the allocation or they could assign a value for PCIA for the benchmark purposes. But the problem here is that we just, without knowing, it makes it much harder to do our long-term planning. So we've been doing a lot of advocacy on the proposed decision, and we will see what happens. However, we're continuing to work this issue as well through the legislature. Okay, next slide, please. So I wanted to talk about energy efficiency because we've been participating in a proceeding, and for the first time since we've been following the issue, we have seen a proposed decision on April 16th. So we have some comments due on May 6th and replies due on May 11th. The energy efficiency proposed decision reforms the process of filing new business plans and portfolios for energy efficiency program administrators. It includes a new metric, which is important because it looks at the total savings benefit. So it really combines both energy and peak demand goals, as well as GHG savings for the first time. It also segments programs into 3 different buckets, looking at resource acquisition, market support, and equity. And it acknowledges that market support and equity may not actually meet the established cost effectiveness test, which enables you to fund programs in those areas without having to meet that cost effectiveness test, which can be impossible at times. There is one challenge that's existing today, which is that with the resource acquisition programs, the cost effectiveness threshold is also increasingly difficult to achieve. And the PD really just doesn't address those issues. So essentially, EBCE is going to be filing comments on this. And part of why it's important is because this summer we expect to file to elect to administer EE programs. So this will be the first time that EBCE is actually getting into EE administration. And under the CPUC's process, we can actually elect to administer EE programs, which means we would get a portion of the energy efficiency funding that is currently managed by the utilities to be able to administer EE programs for our customers. So, so this is a new proceeding for us and one we're excited to be involved in. I believe that is my last regulatory slide. So if you'd like, I can take any questions on regulatory and then move on to legislative, or I can continue.
I see a hand raised by member Cal. Dan, do you have questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Melissa, for this helpful presentation. Back on the PCIA, can you move the slide back one, if possible? Thank you, Adrian. Back one, if we can. Back a couple. One more. There we go. Thank you. To the PCIA, one after that one. Oh, excellent. Great. Thank you. This just came out, you said, and your comments. Is this a commissioner-sponsored decision, or is just the agency, ALJ?
This decision comes from the ALJ. Usually the lead commissioner's office is involved in developing the proposed decision, but it comes from the administrative law judge.
Are we expecting that commissioner or any commissioner to come up with an alternate decision, proposed decision, or is that not likely to happen in this case?
We have not heard any indication of that at this time. They can at any point before it goes to the final agenda. But we are certainly working with CalCCA to have conversations with each of the commissioners.
Okay, and is there anything that we as board members can do as local officials to have an impact to make the changes that we're all asking for, or at least some of them?
I think the best place to influence on this issue truly is at the legislature. And so we are certainly providing all the policy arguments at the PUC. We are meeting with the commissioners' offices. They're called ex parte meetings. They have to be formally noticed, and we're doing all of those steps. But I think that the legislature is going to have more influence on what the PUC does, or on overturning what the PUC does, than advocacy and the proceeding itself here.
Okay, are there any, that's helpful. Are there any interest groups or organizations that are or are likely to have a lot of influence here, or are already having a lot of influence here, that we might need to either counter or work more closely with, or what have you?
I think we are continuing to try to work closely with the parties in the proceeding. They're the ones that probably have the most influence here. Unfortunately, I think the commission has been very much aligned with PG&E's position at times. And, you know, when we think about cost shifts, we think about what are we paying for versus what are we getting. And I think the way that the commission has been considering this issue is, will bundled customers pay more on account of any policy here? So it's a very different kind of perspective to have. It makes sense because the CPUC rate regulates the utilities and their customers. But that's kind of the perspective they come at it, is how is the bundled customer going to be affected?
Right, but so our customers are secondary customers with that philosophy. Yes, okay, I understand.
I would say that, but I would see it that way, yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate all your work.
Sure.
All right, seeing no other hands raised at this time, Melissa, I think you could go on with the legislative portion of the presentation.
Okay, great. Adrian, if you could move to the first legislative slide, please. There we go. So, I'm going to talk through SB 612, give you an update on that, and then we'll get to the next two items as well. So for 612, it was amended on the 26th in accordance with some of the committee consultant recommendations. And with those amendments, it passed out of the Senate Energy, Utilities, and Communications Committee. So that is very good news. That was our first hurdle in the process of moving this bill forward. And I'm excited to say it was an 11-1 vote. So very good result. Yes, we can all celebrate. Some of the opposition includes PG&E, which did not surprise us, SCE, the Utility Reform Network, and the Coalition of Utility Employees. The turn was a bit of a surprise. We didn't know that they had sent in an opposition letter, and we are following up with them to try to understand what their concerns are at this stage, in part because we've been working with them on bill amendments and we thought we had addressed their concerns. I will note that several of the members on the committee voted yes, but indicated concern either about the bill or about CCAs more generally. And some of these members have, for over the long run, had a lot of skepticism about CCAs and the CCA model. So it didn't surprise us that they voiced that skepticism. In some ways, it surprises us more that they voted yes. So we were very excited to have their support in spite of their concerns. And we'll continue to work with those members in educating them and hopefully holding their yes vote on the Senate floor. So in terms of next steps, the amendments are not yet in print, so that those are with Ledge Council and will need to be formally put into the bill. And then it will formally be up for a vote in the Appropriations Committee. Assuming it passes out of appropriations, which we would expect it to, it'll then move to the Senate floor for a vote. Assuming that it passes out of the Senate, our next hurdle will be the Assembly, and particularly the Utilities and Energy Committee there. So we are working with our cities who have submitted letters. A number of our cities have, which has been great. To update those letters when we move it to the Assembly. And for those of our cities who have not yet submitted letters, we are working with them to see if we can get letters by the time the bill reaches the Assembly. So those are our next steps on the bill. I think we're in a good place right now, but we have a big hurdle ahead getting this through the Assembly. So we'll continue the work.
Madam Chair, can I ask a quick question on this bill before we go to the other bills? If I may, through the chair, did Turn's letter, were they opposed, or did they have like opposed unless amended kind of thing? Was there some opportunity with Turn to change their position?
So my understanding is that they weren't opposed, and that we had talked with them beforehand. We were not given a heads up that they were going to oppose, and it was very much a surprise. We're trying to understand why.
Thank you.
Okay, next slide, please. So today, wanted to talk to you about two bills, and these I have not put up for action today, but we'll bring to the board at the next meeting based on our conversations today and this committee's recommendation. The first one was SB 67, authored by Becker. They're actually both authored by Becker. This bill would accelerate the 100% renewable and zero carbon goals, but on a 24/7 basis. It establishes a new type of compliance instrument that the CEC would have to establish and monitor and create new compliance periods for and an accrediting system for. This bill, I will just note, has become a 2-year bill. Senator Becker decided not to move it forward this year. We've been continuing to work with the author on this bill from the very early stages and up through some conversations I had with Senator Becker last week. I think our concerns are that the way it's structured, by creating a new compliance instrument, it actually adds a lot of complexity and a lot of administrative cost to the procurement. We think that we can accomplish the same goal in a much simpler way. And so we're going to continue working with the author to see if we can perhaps get this bill to a place where we can be at support. But today we would recommend just watching and continuing to work with the author on the bill. The second bill, SB 68, is a bill that would essentially help to remove barriers to electrification. Would require the CEC to develop a guide for electrification of buildings and report on barriers today, including adding energy storage or EV charging equipment to existing buildings. That can be quite a challenge at times, so we're looking at removing those barriers. It would authorize the CEC to use EPIC dollars for reducing the cost of building electrification. And it would also specify timeframes by when the investor and utilities have to respond to applications from building owners for service upgrades and interconnections to the electrical system. So hopefully would accelerate that process by kind of providing guidance and direction and spotlighting when the investor-owned utilities aren't meeting those deadlines. So this bill did pass out of committee on the 19th and is now at the Senate floor. And this one, Cal CCA has already taken a support position, and I would recommend that EBCE support as well. Next slide, please. So I think the next 2 slides are just updates on where we're at with our adopted bill positions. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time going through these. I don't think there's too much to update here. Next slide, please. I'll see if there's anything on the next one that we want to talk through. Well, we already talked through 612, so I think that's the important one to update you on. Other than that, we're just continuing to follow these bills as they move through the houses. So I believe that's my last slide. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you, Melissa. Colleagues, if you have any questions, go ahead, use the raise your hand feature to be recognized. Nope, as this is a follow-up on bills that you've introduced us to before, I don't see any further questions. I'll check in with the clerk of the board to see if anyone has submitted a speaker card on this item.
Yes, we do have one speaker, Barbara Stebbins. Barbara Stebbins, I'm unmuting you now.
Great, you have 3 minutes, Barbara.
Unmute. There I am. Thank you. It's been a while. So today I am speaking for the California Alliance for Community Energy. For those of you new on this committee and to the board, we are an organization that advocates for community choice programs. But I am here today. Actually, Audrey stole my thunder earlier by mentioning AB 1139. We are very concerned about this bill, which basically makes revisions to the current net energy metering policy in California that would kill the rooftop solar industry in this state. This should be of major concern to all community choice programs, as it will significantly restrict local clean energy development, as well as equitable energy access and development, and it will reduce energy resilience, local energy resilience. Rooftop solar is an essential component of what we call energy democracy, or increasing the ownership and control of energy resources, especially in low-income communities and communities of color. Eliminating rooftop solar eliminates that possibility, as well as the local jobs and business activity that the industry provides. This bill also interrupts a proceeding that is ongoing at the CPUC to revise the net energy metering policy. That proceeding has involved a significant amount of public input already, and it includes what we think are essential principles that are not being observed by AB 1139. Those principles include ensuring that customer-sited renewable generation continues to grow sustainably. Is that my time already?
No, you have one more minute.
Okay, and reflects the costs and benefits of the system, and that it ensures equity among customers and enhances consumer protection measures and provides regulatory certainty among additional principles, and there are other principles. The proposed revisions are being pushed as essential to address a significant cost shift that rooftop solar pushes onto low-income customers. However, the way that cost shift has been figured included such factors as the cost of the energy that solar customers don't use, which has inflated that cost hugely. Also, the very notion of a cost shift needs to be balanced with the benefit shift, if there is one. All customers in California benefit from rooftop solar and reduced transmission cost, increased local resilience, and increased local economic activity and jobs. The actual cost on customers' bills pales in comparison to increased transmission costs, as well as IOU-caused wildfire costs and stranded assets costs.
Barbara, that's your time.
Okay, where there is no compensating benefit. We urge the EBCE to take a position opposing AB 1139 and urge CalCCA to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Melissa, do you have any analysis on AB 1139 that you'd like to share with us today?
I will say it's a bill that we are watching closely and also have some concerns with. I understand that it was amended fairly significantly in committee, and we're waiting for those latest amendments to be published. I don't know that the amendments really reduce all of our concerns though. So we may be coming back with a recommended position on this one. But again, we wanted to kind of see first where the bill ended up.
Great, thank you. So let's keep an eye on that. And members of the public, if you wish to be recognized, you use the raise hand feature in Zoom, or you hit *9. I do not see any hands raised, so I'm going to close public comment on this item. Colleagues, is there any discussion on our legislative agenda? Chair Cal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you again, Melissa, for this presentation. I agree with the concerns of the speakers that we should be carefully watching 1130, was it 38, 39? I forgot the bill number already. It has some potential to be really very problematic, and it also presents an opportunity for us to closely support and ally ourselves with the solar industry. And there's always pluses and minuses when you're taking positions on bills, but I think we have to make sure we try to make sure that either this bill gets changed or that it dies in the Senate. I appreciate you bringing forward 68. I think I mentioned that a few days last week at the board meeting, and I hope at the next board meeting that we do support that bill and help get that to the governor. That's it. Thanks for your great work. I know there are lots of bills in Sacramento, so I appreciate what you and our lobbyists are doing up there. Thanks again.
Great, thank you, Chair Cal. Is there any further comment or questions from the board? No. Seeing none, let's move on to committee member and staff announcements, including requests to place items on future board agendas. Member Kalb.
I don't think I have anything.
Oh, sorry, I just saw your hand raised.
Yeah, it was from the last thing.
Okay. For me, it just came to my attention this week as I attended graduation for staff academy in the Capitol in Sacramento, that independently owned utilities have had their tenterhooks in deep with developing staff and developing candidates to run in our assembly and in our Senate. And it's, you know, I'd love to have a forum to discuss with my colleagues and with staff kind of how do we balance, how do we level the playing field when we're dealing with PG&E and Southern California Edison paying for events, paying for caucus events, paying for cocktail hour, supporting scholarships, creating partnerships with the California Department of Education to send high school students to the Capitol to lobby legislators on issues that are valid to them. How do we make ourselves a presence outside of the very good work and valid work that we already do? But how do we, you know, break into that third house with all of the good work that we want to do? So I'd like to, if my colleagues are amenable to that, I don't even know what to call the item, but maybe lobbying on a, you know, outside of specific bills, but the type of development that that happens in Sacramento around developing those relationships and developing relationships with the people who will not only be working in the Capitol, but those people who will find themselves in office, those people that we all had to lobby to vote on SB 612, and those deep relationships that they have with our investor-owned utilities. How do we get Cal CCA on a level playing field with those folks? So it looks like we've got comments from my colleagues. I will recognize Member Kalb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I went through a similar training or workshop about 4 years ago and saw the same thing you're seeing. You know, utilities and big real estate interests, all sorts of interests were had a big hand in certain things, and you wonder where are the public interest groups? And it's like, and so it's disturbing to say the least. What you're, I think what you're bringing up is not a new challenge. There are advocacy groups, certainly environmental groups, that have been combating this for decades. I don't have an answer, but I'm totally open to if agencies such as ours, special districts such as ours, can have some role. I'm not sure what that would be to counter what you're describing, or if we could ally ourselves with public interest associations to counter that. I'm all for it. I'm not sure how to operationalize that, but you're articulating a very real problem.
Yeah, I'd like to bring it up to Cal CCA because I think that CCAs together could have a shared interest in renewable energy and those types of causes. But thank you for your support. Member Lopez?
Thank you. Yes, I think that would be a really great idea to see, you know, both just the concept of how do we collaborate and how do we ally and how do we build a bench even in terms of leadership, even with, you know, youth leadership. There are a lot of folks that are like-minded in where we are. In fact, I would say probably a number of us wear other hats in nonprofit organizations. And I think this is a really great idea. I think we need to do this type of work. We're at the level of maturity now as a CCA where we should be doing this work. So I think this is very worthwhile if we can put some energy and think through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Lopez. Mayor May?
Yes, I was just thinking about your comments in terms of representation. I also was thinking about some of the topics that I was hoping to bring up about workforce development and how we in this time period are a growing industry and there's a lot of uncertainty. And I come from the background originally of being on school board and have been working on some of those programs here for a lot of the reasons that we've mentioned earlier today about the instability of employment, the need for better jobs, and the connections of which to create the pipeline for our company. So I'd love to share sometime. We had just piloted a ELF program. It's Earn and Learn Fremont, and we had a cohort of 21 individuals who were greatly impacted by COVID, so many from retail and restaurant, other jobs. And they came in for a period by which during those 8 weeks, they were paid well. It is $18 an hour. And it went through a certificated program for smart manufacturing, which was targeted in terms of the skills that were needed to succeed in that job for a 6-week period. And the education was on site. And then therefore, at the end of it, fortunately, of the graduates, 17, all the ones who graduated actually got permanent jobs. And those are about $26 to $28 an hour. And so we would love to be able to help create those types of programs and resources. And as it is a pilot, and we have over 900 manufacturers and working with EBCE, I've seen the growth that's happened. But part of it, when we talk about some of these industries, is to connect the resource of students to the opportunities. And so for our case, you know, some of the things that I'm very proud of that we've been working on, particularly for some of my biomedical companies this week, I just celebrated the 10th anniversary of one of them, and learning from them that we've been able to help, in particular, their workforce, 70% is minority and women. And so that's something that I would love to be able to strive and create those opportunities with EBCE. And when we talk about providing aid, I think that's the assistance in funding and billing and making sure that they're able to be financially sound. But it is also equally important for us to be able to educate and create them that opportunity so they can ongoing help themselves and their families in these. And it's also selfishly for us as employers, as we're diversifying and growing our business, that we can create that pipeline. So I'd like to see that. One other thing I was going to mention, since we're talking about legislative bills, and it's not directly related, I also have a company in Fremont that might be of interest to all of you when we're talking about how we work with companies and being green. I have a company called Power Knot, and they do biodigesters. And I know many of us are going to be looking at when it comes to energy and other impacts, and we're updating our climate action plans, but the ramifications of trying to address SB 1383 and trying to lower those greenhouse gas reductions. And so not just on the level of scope 1 and 2, which is particularly usually like passenger freight and transportation, but on scope 3 in terms of, we're talking about in terms of consumption and with food. And so I don't know if that's something that you'd ever be interested in working collaboratively on, because these are goals and initiatives when we look at some of these opportunities for addressing legislative policies, and when it comes to how we implement working our partnerships with companies, these are things I think that could be symbiotic and mutually beneficial in terms of creating some of those alliances. So I think it'd just be something, maybe in addition to our legislative discussions, maybe we can create, when we talk about how can we get our name out there, not just getting our names out there because we're purchasing marketing dollars or other programs, but maybe that we're creating our own alliances in terms of these efforts that we're working on.
Thank you, Mayor May. So I agree 100% about including a conversation on workforce development. If you don't mind, I hope if we could keep that as 2 separate items, I think there's enough to talk about in workforce development for it to support its own item. And then in terms of the biodigesters, I just had a quick question. Does that, the biodigesters, do they produce energy that could be procured?
No, that's what I'd like to see, because they actually manufacture and engineer their own products here. And they have some of the engineers, that leads to other issues about immigration, other stuff too, with some of the workforce, and we're trying to keep somebody employed, hopefully. But they do make their own machines. And I've been looking at some of these, it's been a busy week, I've had that. And then also, I went to one of our restaurants, and that's one of the things I was looking at is the amount of food waste. And if there was a way to create energy, by all means, that would be amazing, considering that one of the restaurants I went to this weekend, or this past week, they had enough food waste, because they serve 2,000 meals a day on the weekends, that they need a truck to move their food waste. So, you know, if there was a machine, believe me, maybe that's an engineering / workforce challenge. And if we could do that, we can brand it and we can sell the technology or patents for that, and we can create our own reliable workforce scholarship program.
So what I think we could do here is we'll take those as 3 items then.
3 items, yes.
So for the first, do we have a thumbs up on kind of building that legislative bench?
Yes.
And folks in Sacramento and getting our hooks in and bringing people up? Great. And then the second idea would be for workforce development, have a conversation around that. And I would defer to Mayor May, if staff and Mayor May could work together on developing a topic for that. And then thirdly, if we have any role in assistance with implementation of Senate Bill 1383, and to be able to talk about biodigesters, and also just a general conversation perhaps about any procurement of energy that would help us meet those goals that are set forth in the regulations of Senate Bill 1383. And I know staff has been working with the technical advisory group at Stop Waste and with all of our individual cities on that implementation.
Well, I wouldn't say that they entirely need to be separate, because one of the reasons why I thought about it is that I also have a company which, you know, it was interesting. I was talking to them on a site visit for the one I was talking about for the 10th anniversary. They were talking about how they are biomedical, not just R&D, but they manufacture. And one of their biggest challenges when we look at some of the legislative policies that are occurring with, you know, electrification, and I know EBC has a personal take on that, but their impact is because they're molecules, not just chemicals. These are living organisms. And so when there's an insecurity with power, they were actually explaining to me their concerns are, you know, if power goes down, they can't have it go down, because when it goes down, they have to have a generator or something to be able to justify, because otherwise their product dies. And so that's a real concern. So I was thinking there's opportunities sometimes that we don't think about in terms of how we can work with one another. And they have grown from 150 employees to over 700. And so when they're looking at that and they're building their next building, I don't know if EBC has ever done a lot of outreach in terms of how we work with cities and municipalities, because we think about that when it comes to our policies on how we have development and plan developments and guidelines. For our city a couple years ago, one of the things that we implemented was seeing the transition to solar. We actually had that as a component for our planning commission, so that it becomes a standard by which we initiated before the state is initiated, because we knew this is the direction people were going in. So we have both solar rooftop ready as well as EV charge ready for their housing. So these are things that we can do collectively as a policy and legislative thought process to make it more, I guess, also cohesive and more powerful in terms of impact on our communities.
You're absolutely right. And I'll defer to you if you don't mind, Mayor May, on developing those topic guidelines for future.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Okay, with staff. Nick, did you want to respond?
I actually didn't want to respond. I did want to actually raise a topic that came up in a conversation with Council Member Harrison and Mayor Arreguín this past week that I thought might be relevant, kind of apropos these discussions. And it was, they had shared with me that Lyft has decided to discontinue its the e-bike component of the bike sharing program that has been in place. So, you know, in San Francisco, we have a lot of these e-bikes. They're widely used. And so the question was, you know, and Mayor Arreguín had mentioned that he's been speaking with your colleague, Mayor Martinez, John Bowders, about you know, potentially evaluating, you know, trying to find some way to you know, a regional approach to micromobility, really electric bikes, more so than anything. And, you know, asked whether it's something that we might be interested in, you know, exploring, you know, given the scope of our JPA, there might actually be some logic to exploring whether or not there's, you know, even like a secondary business line that we would operate. Obviously there's questions about funding, of course, but you know, so what was proposed was perhaps you know, engaging with some UC students to sort of do an evaluation of best you know, best practices, you know, and you know, what are other, you know, regions around the world that are doing interesting things with micromobility and, you know, micromobility and sharing. And you know, use that as the basis to sort of explore, is there a model that where EBCE could kind of serve as the, yeah, where EBC could somehow help to ensure those services get brought back to the East Bay. So I want to just mention that, and you know, to the degree that there is interest, we certainly can kind of.
I 100% support.
We can have some internal dialogue, and then perhaps, you know, put some, you know, not major resources yet, but put some resources towards, you know, seeing, you know, if we can get somebody to kind of do a study or look into it for us.
I would second that request.
I would support that too.
Very
We have several manufacturers here in our city of both e-bike, and we're also home to some of your mobility competitors or providers. So I know that they're based here.
Great.
I think the difference between the regular bike share and the e-bike share will be what crosses the line for a lot of people, that they will 100% hop on an e-bike, whereas they're not necessarily going to challenge themselves on hills with heavy bikes that we've got right now. So
Yeah, no, I mean, I live in San Francisco, and the e-bikes are extremely popular, and you know, I think it's a really effective mode of getting from point A to point B. So
I used one for bike to work day last time.
well, I look forward to seeing that on a future agenda.
Okay.
Any more comments or future agenda items? This is I love having all the ideas trickle to the top. And Mayor May, I'm glad you had all of those meetings this week that made you think of all the synergies that we can be
Busy
exploring.
week.
So Member Lopez?
You're asking for additional potential items for future. Okay, thank you. So yeah, I do. It's actually not quite external facing as some of the previous comments, which I think were excellent ideas. It's more an internal look. I know we have a lot of new board members, and we're doing quite a bit of onboarding, and we still have some onboarding to go. We have, when I say onboarding, I mean the retreats. It might be wise to maybe take a poll or send out an email, even nothing formal, and just sort of getting some feedback as to if people are able to, if just being sure that people feel caught up in the onboarding process, because we have so much competing areas of competing meetings. I think one person just needed to sign off, in fact, and not all the people have been able to make all of those meetings. I know that they're on the web, but I just want to be sure that everyone is feels really comfortable and feels that there is a basic understanding of the nomenclature and concepts and so forth. It's at least for the new folks, and I think also it's just a great reminder for the folks that are more veteran. I think that what I'm seeing dynamically in some of the meetings is that the veterans are comfortable moving forward, right? But I'm just not convinced that's the case all the way around, and I just don't know without any kind of data or feedback. So I'm wondering if we can have some sort of survey or feedback, nothing too sophisticated, or a way for people to provide input, directly to staff, and then maybe just check in at one of our future board meetings and give people an opportunity to, outside of sort of some of the agenda items, but being able to sort of have a comment. I just want to make sure everyone feels that they're included. I mean, the work here is very important, but it's also very, very detailed. And I want everyone to feel really good about where we are, and whether, get the feedback, whether the trajectory that we're on is the one that resonates for everybody. And if there's additional things, like some of the ideas that just came out of this e-board meeting, there's other ideas that board members have. So I've not seen a whole lot in terms of referrals coming in, from the board members themselves. And maybe that's good, maybe that's bad, but maybe, I just don't know. So those are just some feedback and just some opportunity there. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Lopez. Mayor, your hand is still raised. Did you have any?
Oh, no.
Okay, no problem.
I agree, although with what Member Lopez said. I also think the other thing that would help me personally is if we published a longer calendar, because usually some of the other agencies send me a year-long calendar, and I'm booked out for the year already on many of the other agencies, and it just helps for sanity. So I know where I'm roughly supposed to be. I haven't been able to load myself yet.
I would like to add that I've just recently updated the year-long calendar on the public meetings page, so it's accurate as of the last few days.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And I'm going to presume that staff heard all of Member Lopez's comments. I think I will second them as well. It's great to get feedback from all of our new board members to make sure that they understand all of these really deep concepts. And I think that, you know, I have the sense that we might be even more detailed than other CCAs in terms of all of the data we collect. I understand from the workshop that we had recently. So we can do really great work, but I want to make sure that none of our board members, especially new ones and especially alternates who get slipped in from time to time, that they're not left behind. Certainly no members of the public either. But with all of those comments in, and that seeing the time is 2:05, I want to thank everyone for their participation today. We had a great conversation. Thanks staff for all of the presentations. And I will adjourn this meeting at 2:05 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks. Have a great weekend. Be safe. Stay healthy.